Hi, Dr. Frank Wen here from Integrity Chiropractic. If you feel like you threw your back out, I'm going to try to help you get more comfortable and moving again in this video. This won't be suitable for every type of low back pain case, but I believe this will be helpful for a fairly common subset of back pain cases that I often see, especially on the weekends. So who do I think this will be helpful for? 1. You woke up and you felt this pain come on sometime shortly after you got out of bed, just doing your normal stuff. Or you picked up an object that was light to moderate, maybe less than 40 pounds, and then the pain came on. Or you reached for something above and below you and the pain came on. 2. You're having difficulty walking right now, and especially with doing anything that requires you to bend forward, such as putting your shoes or pants on, even when sitting. If you're standing, you're probably bent or shifted in your torso. I imagine you probably feel the most comfortable right now laying down and not moving. 3. You have no numbness, tingling, or weakness in your groin, thighs, legs, and feet. If this sounds like you, then stick with me. Otherwise, abandon ship and try to go find whatever professional help you can. Otherwise, I'm going to take you through step by step on how you can try to work through this as best as you can on your own and hopefully get some relief. And if you're lucky, maybe even resolve this. So this is going to be a bit of a process, although some people may progress a little bit quicker than others. Don't rush any of the steps because this will take time. But my hope is you'll be able to resolve at least half your pain and move around a bit again. The first step is I want you to get some heat. Either a heat pack or microwave a wet towel that you can wrap up and place on you. If you've got someone at home to help you do that, great. Otherwise, take your time and go do that now. It'll probably help if you have a pillow to rest your face on as well. Once you've got that, we're going to go on our stomach and place this heat source right over the most painful part that you feel and hang out there for 10 to 15 minutes and let that heat help relax the muscles in that area. Where I'm pointing to in the video are the most common areas where I find the issue is when people throw their back out. So I'm not going to make you watch me here for 10 minutes with the heat pack, but I want to explain something really quick that you may be wondering about before you can pause to finish this step before we go to the next part. So you might be wondering, what the hell happened to me? Did I blow out a disc or something? So a lot of things can cause back pain, and most people tend to think it's a pinched nerve or a disc issue in these cases, but very rarely is it so because there's usually no neurological problems found during the exam, and people usually aren't doing the type of activities that would blow out a disc, such as a deadlift with a few hundred pounds with bad form. Not to say that this couldn't happen, but 9 times out of 10, usually not. For these type of sudden low back pain cases that seem inexplicable, with no crazy weightlifting or sports involved, my theory is that the issue is a combination of overload to certain units in the muscle tissue that aren't accustomed to or primed for contracting or extending in a certain range of motion or direction. And then they're suddenly challenged such that it triggers a spasm in the muscle, which is really painful because any movement that tries to extend that spasming muscle irritates it even more, which is why bending forward is usually impossible in this situation. Whether that spasm is due to a microtrauma, such as a strain or a protective mechanism, we don't really know because we can't just put people in all sorts of precarious situations to make their backs go out and then cut them open and put their tissue under a microscope to figure out what it is. It's not ethical. So this is where we have to use a little bit of inference. I hesitate to call it a strain because having strained a muscle before, that feeling of pain persists even if you're not moving, whereas in this case, you're usually okay until you try to move around. So you can just pause the video here while you hang out with some heat for a few more minutes. So after you've been laying there for about 10 or more minutes, take the heat off now and crawl up onto your elbows so that your torso is elevated off the ground but your hips and legs are still touching. What you're going to do is lower your head and torso down as far as you can go and then raise yourself back up. I want you to spend 2 minutes doing that over and over just like I'm doing in the video at that speed. Take a small break if you need to, if your arms are getting tired in this process. What we're doing with this exercise is gently extending the back repetitively and trying to contract and shorten the muscles in the back to get them in a position where they don't feel like they're being pulled on, irritated, or in a position of danger. And the goal is to try to break this need for it to be in spasm or protection. So while you're doing this, I'll say a few more things. Usually most patients will end up going to urgent care where they'll get muscle relaxers, which definitely will take some edge off their pain, but many patients don't like how it can make them feel loopy or sleepy, especially if they have work to do. And once it wears off, usually the pain is back. If you do nothing at all and just rest, you'll probably recover within a week or two, but most people want to get back to life quickly. If you're feeling comfortable enough, I would like you to try to extend even more by locking out your elbows so that you can push your torso higher. It'll be easier to do if the arms are a little bit more out in front of you. Patients sometimes will ask me, is it because I don't train my core enough? The answer is yes and no. Many different types of practitioners out there spend a lot of time teaching core stabilization exercises to protect the low back, which are wonderful for moving heavy loads and being in athletic type situations. But I'll often get patients that end up in my office with this problem, and they'll tell me they've done a ton of core exercises or back extension strengthening exercises in the past, either with a PT or another chiropractor, but the problem still happens about once or twice a year. That's why, to me, this is more of a mobility / neuromuscular control issue. We sit all day and move in a very limited range of motion generally. So if you can't bend over and pick up a small object from the ground without having to go through a systematic process to protect your low back and lower yourself to the ground, that's not necessarily normal. That's probably why yoga is having success in addressing low back pain, because it's helping improve general mobility in the area. Research has also shown that people with chronic low back pain benefit from general exercise just as much as any specifically targeted exercise. Why? Because any movement is probably better than no movement. That's another reason why I'm a big proponent of having a good personal trainer that you see regularly to keep introducing novel movement patterns to your brain so you can handle whatever life throws at you. At this point, if you feel like you're able to shift around on the ground now with less pain, we're going to try to move on to the next step and release some of these muscles on our own. You're welcome to repeat the whole process we just went through again if you feel like it's helping, but you're not quite ready to move. So in the video, I'm pointing out again the 3 common areas that I find in spasm. Usually it's the extensor muscles at the thoracolumbar and lower lumbar area, as well as the glute medius muscle. These pictures are here for you to see. There are some other smaller muscles deeper to the extensors that it could be as well, but to keep it simple, these 3 I'm talking about should help you get to where you need to be. I'm going to give you a few different options you can try to release these muscles with on the ground, assuming you're alone. So if the pain is in the extensor muscles, one thing you can do is make a fist with your hand on the opposite side of the pain and place the knuckles over the painful spot, and then use your other hand on the same side to reinforce downward pressure. Staying in this spot, you can slowly goad the muscle up and down for several minutes with moderate pressure as best as you can. It will be a little bit tiring, and you'll have to take breaks because you're by yourself. You'll want to take your time doing this though, as it's not unusual that I'll spend at least 20 minutes trying to relax one of these muscles by hand for my patients in the office, so take your time. The other option you have is you can use your finger points to hone in on the spot and goad it gently as well, especially if it's in the deep lower back where those extensor muscles are bulkier. If it's on your glute, you can place the opposite hand's knuckles on top of the muscle and then use your other hand to push down into the open hand grip to apply more downward pressure into it. So assuming you're alone still, and if you can do so, you can turn to your side with the painful side up, and I can show you a couple other self-massage techniques. In the side position, you might find it easier in approaching the extensor muscles, especially coming in from the side, because they're more relaxed in this position. You're able to use your knuckles or even your thumb, and might have an easier time accessing some of the deeper parts where the pain might be. You might also have more leverage. If you happen to have a lacrosse ball, you could use it to release these muscles like I demonstrated in my self-release with the lacrosse ball video, but you might not be comfortable enough yet to shimmy around on top of a ball. If you have someone at home, they can help you by using a thumb or their fingers to help massage these painful spots. You could also have them use a massage gun as well if you happen to have one of those laying around. The last option you have that can kind of replicate the lacrosse ball is to take your fist and place it on the ground while you slowly rock your muscles into the fist. Whatever one of these methods you end up going with, just make sure you spend a good 20 to 30 minutes working it slowly. So at this point, you have a couple of options. If you're able to stand up easier now, we can go to the next step. Otherwise, you can go back to your stomach and repeat the upper torso press-ups again. I wouldn't massage the areas more than a couple times a day without resting a few hours in between. Otherwise, the next step is simple. It's going to be like what we did on our stomach, but standing. I want you to place your hands in the small of your back, and I want you to repeatedly arch backwards at the slow pace I'm doing at in the video. I want you to do that for a minute or two. So if you feel like these steps up to this point have made your pain better, but the pain is still moderate when you're walking around or standing, then I would continue to repeat these exercises a couple of times over the next day or two until it's mild when you're standing or walking. If you've gotten to the point where you feel it's mild or barely noticeable when you're standing or walking, then we can proceed to the next step. We're now going to try to restore neuromuscular control to the low back now that the spasm has been calmed down. In simpler terms, I just want your body to be able to do what you want to do in your mind. Primarily, we're going to try to reestablish your ability to bend forward again. We're going to do this in a graded manner such that your mind and body can regain confidence and control with increasing amounts of demand and load to the low back. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is go onto your hands and knees under the ground so you're in a crawling position. From your resting position, I'm going to have you sit your butt back to your heels, trying to round your back, essentially going into a child's pose, and then returning to the start position. You're going to repeat this like I'm doing for a minute or two. If doing this movement hurts a lot, then I would go back and spend more time on the previous steps until it doesn't. In this position, your back is fairly unloaded as your brain is not having to coordinate the stacking of your torso, so you can just focus on reestablishing that normal shortening and lengthening of all the muscles in your low back as you round it. If you're feeling more and more comfortable, try to sit back further if you can. So after you've spent at least a minute or two doing that, I'm going to have you come up onto one knee. You're going to start in the tall position and bend forward to touch your fingers to the ground, trying to round your low back and then return to the tall position. Do this repeatedly for 1 minute. In this position, we're starting to add a little bit more load to our low back again as we're upright, but the control and coordination demands will be less compared to standing. After you've done that for a minute, we'll switch knees and repeat the process. When you finish that step, I'll have you transition to a bench or dining chair for our final movement drill. Basically, you're going to start in an upright position and reach forward, trying to touch your fingers to the ground, rounding your low back, and then return to the start position. I want you to do this for a minute or two. So hopefully, if you've made it here, you're feeling a lot less pain and a lot of your mobility has returned. At this point, I would continue to do these back rounding exercises in this order a couple times each day for the next several days until you feel that you're back to normal again. It would probably be best to do it first thing in the morning, as most people will wake up a little tight again, and it's a good way to loosen and warm up your back before you get going with your day. It's also not a bad idea to run through everything from the beginning as well to aggressively attack the issue. If you happen to have needed this video and you found it helpful, please like or leave a comment. Thanks for watching. Keep moving.